Good evening and welcome to the Vines Wednesday night live stream. So glad that you could join us. Let's dig in. A couple of things as we get started. A reminder, Easter Sunday is this Sunday, and we only have one service. It's at 9:30, and so we want you to come, join us. We'll be outside, stuff going on inside for the kids. You won't want to miss it. It's going to be awesome. There are baptisms taking place on Easter. We've got quite a few people being baptized. If you think you're ready to take that step of faith, would love to talk to you about that. Glow-in-the-dark Easter egg hunt for the kids. Gonna be awesome. You won't want to miss it. Grab some kids, even if you don't have kids, and bring them with you. It's gonna be a good time this week. All right, tonight we wrap up a 30-sermon series called Wisdom. We took the whole first quarter of the year, everything from January on, right after Christmas we started to talk about the concept of wisdom. And when we did, that takes us to the book of Proverbs, specifically chapter 22 through 24, where we talked about the 30 wise saying, a collection of wisdom put together from the Hebrew people, and we are still reading it today. And so tonight, we wrap all of that up. You say, why dedicate so much time? Because there's a wisdom shortage, and YouTube's proof. Check it out.
I didn't like the way you and your boys were disrespecting me last night. I just wanted to let you know that you better think twice again before you disrespect me, because honestly, I've done things that you and your boys would never do. Alright? So just know that I go harder than anyone I know, much less anyone that you know, okay? So, you dig? Do you dig? You're from New Jersey and you don't know how to do it. But my raps are tighter than yours, my muscles are bigger, you ain't got no chains, you ain't got no wife beaters, no guns, no hair gel. Just respect me. You ain't nothing. I'll come up there, probably flash my guns around a little bit. I'll go, ooh, dude, my mom's gonna kill me. Oh my God.
I love it so much. My mom's gonna kill me. So tough until your mama's involved. All right, here we go. There are always gonna be opportunities, decisions, invitations that you have to consider. And in this series, the whole foundation to what we've been talking about over the last 30 weeks is, what do you do? What happens when these opportunities, decisions, invitations, what happens when they're presented to you? What is the filter by which you decide what the best route to go is? And these decisions, these opportunities, these invitations, they come in a variety of sections of your life, relationally, vocationally, financially, sexually, spiritually, whatever. There's all of these different areas of our life, and we've got to decide, what road are we going to take in these areas? And they don't stop. It's not just one area one time and it's done. It's a constant deluge of decision-making that surrounds these different areas of our life. And we have to make decisions. We have to say, should I stay? Should I go? Should I buy it, sell it? Should I start it up? Should I stop it? Should I move in? Should I move out? And on the list goes. Each and every one of those little micro decisions within one of those categories of life amounts to a lot of the consequences, the pain, the frustration. Many of you listening to this, whether it's here in the auditorium tonight or online, can think back to some area of our life where we made a decision and we said, if I could just get that one back, if I could just not have made that decision, if I could have just made a better choice there. Some of our biggest regrets in life boil down to a micro decision that we made. Person that we chose to be with, a night that we chose to go out on, whatever it was, we can look back and say, that was not good. We are constantly asking ourselves the wrong question, and that's been the basis of this series, that we have this tendency to ask ourselves the wrong questions about how to deal with all of this decision making. Think about it, for example. The questions we typically ask are, is it right or wrong, legal, good? Is everyone okay with this decision that I'm about to make? But Proverbs challenges us, all that wisdom litter challenges us to make a better decision, to filter those decisions through a better methodology. These aren't the right questions. The right question is, according to the Proverbs, is it wise? And that's a different question. That's not these questions. Let's take, for example, just one of the questions that we typically ask ourselves and then filter through some of this wisdom literature as we wrap up this series together tonight. Is there anything wrong with it? Usually when presented a decision that surrounds a relational issue, whether it surrounds a physical issue, a sexual issue, a vocational issue, we start with this question. Is there anything wrong with this? Is this the wrong thing? But we went to great lengths in this series to point out that it's possible for something to be legal and still really unwise. Like those two things can coexist at the same time, which means you can be making decisions that are legal or they're not necessarily wrong, but they're not necessarily wise or the best decisions for you in your life at that moment. For example, we applied wisdom literature like Why Say number 25 in this series. It says, God understands all hearts and he sees you. We reminded you that we have a tendency to drift towards brokenness, that God knows our hearts, that we're not fooling anybody. And even though we're great salesmen for ourselves, we're not fooling God. We can pretty much convince ourselves of anything that we want to do. That's why it's never good to be left alone in making all of these decisions, especially these micro decisions that lead up to this life and a life of consequences. You know, it's possible to be faced with a decision and in the moment to sell yourself on what you really want in the short term, which is an amazingly dangerous scenario. Many times, that's why many of us don't ask for input from other people. We don't look at, is it wise question, because we don't want to face that answer. We'd rather just full steam ahead into our brokenness. This little wisdom nugget here reminds us that our hearts are bent not towards the good. They're bent towards things that are broken. That's why when Jesus arrives on the scene and gives his first sermon, he spends so much time talking about motives, not actions, motives. He's reminding the people that no matter what they've done, God still knows their hearts and will judge them based on their hearts and their motives. That's what makes him the great judge, and it's what makes his writing, it's what makes his teaching, it's what makes these proverbs so poignant, because they give direction that's beyond just what we want in the moment. Check this out. Why Say number 22 we looked at in this series. Victory is won through many advisors, which means when faced with one of these decisions, it's always great to invite in other voices that can help us round out some of this decision making. The is it right question won't get you there. The is it wise question will, but the is it wise question is always rebuffed and up against our own motives and our own what's driving us. And many times what's driving us is brokenness. It's what's driving us is sinfulness. I know that's a big church word and it's hard to hear, but it's true, and you know it's true. When we invite in other voices, they're more apt to point out when they see pride or when they see motives of lust or motives of financial disaster about to take place. You know, it's like you bring your idea to your grandparent or your parent, and they have that look on their face like, really? This is what you're going to do? Not a good idea. All right, for example, check this out. How close can I get to the line between right and wrong without going over? That's the second question people usually ask if they start with the first question, which is this right, or is there anything wrong with this? So if you start with the wrong question, is there anything wrong with this? No. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then you move to the second question, which usually is this: how close to the line can I get between right and wrong and still get away with it all without going over that line? That's usually the next question, cocked and loaded in the barrel. Check this out. Why say number 20? We talked about this one. Don't envy evil people and don't envy the wicked. We said just because you see other people in momentary situations that you don't have all the information behind, getting seemingly away with it, doesn't mean that that's the right thing, the good thing, or the wise thing for you. And that's what the Proverbs literature is saying. If you start to envy people that are seemingly wicked, that are getting away with it, it's just a matter of time till that leads to disaster. The third question that people ask, if they start with the, is there anything wrong with it, and how close to the line can I get, is this: how far can I go over the line without experiencing the consequences I don't want, without being burdened with consequences that affect my daily outcome? How far can I go over the line? And if you say, no, I don't do this, you're a liar, because most of us drive right at or right over the speed limit. And if we're really honest, you're driving over the speed limit at the number you picked that you think the cops won't pull you over for, which is exactly what I'm saying. But we do this in all of these other areas of life. And so if you start with the wrong question, it tends to snowball into other questions that don't lead to a wise answer. And to that, why say number 16? We brought this up. It says, don't join those who drink too much or wine or gorge themselves on meat. Drunkards and gluttons become poor. I mean, this was a reminder that the outcomes and the consequences to things that in the moment started out fine, many times end in disaster. Many times we start making micro decisions over long periods of time that all of a sudden we wake up one day and we're at this place in our life we never thought we'd be, whether that's physically, whether that's emotionally or relationally. Nobody gets married and says, you know what, I think I'm going to tank this thing, end it in divorce. It's going to be awful, really hurt the kids. Nobody says that, but it happens. Nobody gets, is 15 and in high school and says, you know what, I think I'm going to be obesely overweight by the time I'm 65 to the point where there's really no chance for me to lose this, right? Nobody does those sorts of things. Nobody says, hey, I know I'm only going to take this drug once or twice. I'm really never going to be dependent upon it. Like, everybody thinks those thoughts, but it doesn't always work out that way. That's why the wisdom literature brings up this concept that the right question to start with isn't, is it right or wrong? Isn't like, is there anything wrong with this? Isn't how close I can get to the line? Isn't how far I can go over the line? That the right question is it wise? And think about this for a moment. Is it wise for you right now, considering the things you want to achieve? Is it wise for you right now? Think about it. For some people, in my particular family, God bless, this situation for me. I'm thankful for it. But in my family, chemical abuse was never a thing. My parents weren't chemically dependent. Their parents weren't chemically dependent. And as far as I know, the parents before them. It's never been a thing that ran in our family. And so, you know what? For me, let's just be honest. For me, if I had dinner with the wife tonight and a glass of wine, wouldn't be a big deal. But if you know that there's a deep thread in your family of brokenness that's gone from generation after generation after generation of chemical dependency, and that you still want to toy with it, you have to ask yourself, well, yeah, it's nothing wrong with it, but is it wise? Like, you got to ask that question. And the wisdom question is dependent upon you. Like, is it wise for you with all that you know about your history, about your family, about what you want to achieve in your life, right? Like, what do you want to do moving forward? What's your hopes and dreams? Have you considered that? Add that to the wisdom factor and ask yourself, is this wise? That's what Proverbs is saying. I told you in this series that The word for wisdom in the Old Testament and the Hebrew literature is chachmah, which just means applied knowledge, meaning that once you know it, you actually live it. Once you know something, you actually apply it into your daily life. And as we went through this series, we went back again and again to this concept, asking ourselves, not just ethereally, is it wise, but how do you live that wisdom out in a daily routine? What do you give up? What do you not dabble in? What decisions do you make about your home? How does that change things? Not just in your mind, but actually in your behavior. Are you with me? Last but not least, why saying number 30? We talked about this last week, and we spent some time on this, and this is important. The whole foundation of the wisdom literature starts with the fear of the Lord. I told you, and I want to remind you that most of us grew up in situations when it came to church where the concept of the fear of the Lord was be scared. It'll hit you with a lightning bolt if you don't shape up. And though God has the power to do whatever he wants to do, and I'm not saying that he can't throw lightning bolts, I'm saying there's more. There's more that meets the eye than just this understanding of that phrase. We looked at Jesus explaining that this type of fear is connected to worship, and that people who worship God, who seek God daily, who worship him, have an applied outcome. Meaning that if you start your day, you start your life, you start your priorities with a sense of, hey, there is a God. I'm created in his image. I am accountable to him. I'm going to worship him with all of my being and choices. It does change the daily outcome, the applied outcome, your behavior. It just does. But it all starts with this. And so I guess I would say, if you're looking for a place to get started after all of these discussions with wisdom, if you're looking for a place to say, hey, where do I start? Then I always tell people the same thing. Start with worship. You say, well, what does that mean, start with worship? Become a worshiper. That means take what we do here at the church seriously. Take the corporate gathering seriously. Make a commitment if you haven't made one. Maybe you're just more along the lines of like, hey, if I'm around and like, you know, there's a riptide at the beach, I might come to church on Sunday. Up your game. Make it more of a commitment. Decide that honoring those times of corporate worship are going to be important to you. Take it a step further. Don't just rely on the corporate worship hour. Become a worshiper in your daily life. And that's going to look a little bit different for each of you. You think about it. There's only 52 Sundays a year. That's 52 hours out of the hour that we're actually in worship. A lot of you're listening to edifications and some teaching. And yes, that's a component of worship. But the actual seeking God and singing to God and praying to God, like let's boil it down to 30 minutes. So 52 weeks a year, that's 30 minutes out of those 52 weeks. What's that? 26 weeks a year or 26 hours a year you're actually worshiping, if that's what you boil worship down to. Even if you tacked on a small group that you attended, okay, let's say 50% of the time, you upped it to, I don't know, 35 hours a year. Or even you said, I'm gonna come to Wednesday night and do that. Okay, even 55 hours a year, whatever it is, it's nothing compared to the actual time of your life. It's minuscule. In order for worship to really change you, to change the wisdom factor in your life, to change the behavior in your life, you're going to have to up your game, which means you're going to have to become a worshiper in your daily experience. And that means if you got time alone in the car, that means getting up early in the morning. That means maybe before you go to bed at night. In instituting times where you're honoring God with your emotions, with your prayer, with reading his word, with inviting his Holy Spirit to lead you. As you do that, right, as you take them and prioritize him and that relationship, that will change you. That's the game changer. It will change you. But listen, you're not going to get any of that wisdom without listening to what he's said to you, without listening to how he's directed you. And so you got to prioritize that. And when you do, that chachma will become a reality for you. So don't ask the wrong questions. Start with the right question. And start with prioritizing God. You do those two things, and you're on your way to better outcomes. You're on your way to less consequences. You're on your way to less regret. That's just how it works. All right, that's all I got for you tonight. That wraps up our series. We'll see you Sunday as we get going for Easter, and then we'll start some new stuff after Easter. Plow through the rest of the year. I promise you it'll be great. We got a new marriage small group coming up too. I want to tell you more about that on Easter. So if you're interested in that, listen closely on Easter for how you can get signed up for that. We're excited about it. I hope that you'll join us and be ready to worship. We're going to make this like a blowout, come back to church. Let's get this going Easter celebration this Sunday. Goodbye. God bless. Love you. Mean it.